My name is Ted White, and I'm looking at the video of the walls, the Missouri State Penitentiary and MSSP in Jefferson City, Missouri, where I was incarcerated from 2000 until 2003. And there's the front entranceway. As you see that, the Missouri State Penitentiary logo. I believe the prison was built in 1836. It's the oldest prison west of the Mississippi, and up until just a few years ago, it was still operational, if you can believe that. Even with the pipes the way they were and the condition of the prison, they just paid the fine and kept it open every year. So anyway, it goes all the way back to 1836, and this is one of the original housing units. It was actually the first housing unit that after coming out of rookie walk for 10 days, I was put in housing unit number 3. And there you see the steps leading up to the 3 house, as we called it. We called it the jungle. It was A on the right side and B on the left side. Up with about 3,000 incarcerees into this part. This was the cells that you saw when you were up on the walkway, and I lived on 4 Walk, which was on the west side of the building, and these were the conditions of the cells, almost exactly the way they were, even when we lived in them, except we had old mattresses, and later they replaced them with new mattresses. These were the bunk that we slept in, and that was the toilet and the sink. The pipes were condemned, so there were, you didn't drink the water because you'd have to go to the infirmary because you might die, and you might not get to go to the infirmary. So we didn't drink the water, but that was, usually there were 2-man cells, as you can see, a top bunk and a lower bunk, and the paint is peeled, minus the paint peeling, you know, that you can see the old leverage, the old levers that open the door, so they would actually, down at the end of the runway there, or the walkway, the guards would pop the levers and that would open the doors. So, cell number 156. These cells were really small. They were the size of a small bathroom in a house today. And at night, they would make animal noises, like that's why they called it the jungle, because all of the level 5 inmates were kept in this. This was my first home. My cellmate had been down for 12 years, and when I remember pushing a truck down this walkway with all of the issued stuff they'd just given me, and thinking, how in the world did I get in this place? And it happened to be the end result of what, this dirty cop and those people that conspired against me put me there. And you wake up and you realize that you're, behind bars, and you hear the metal clanging on this, and you wonder, am I ever going to get out to see my family again? To me, it was having to adjust very quickly to the way of prison. This is what you had to go through to get out of 3 House. These are the level of security doors that you had to go to, and at various times of days they'd have all of these doors shut or all of them open, depending on what time. So they have limited movement, and to get in and out of 3 House, you had to come down the steps and then walk past the sergeant's desk, and you can see the mail area there where you drop your mail, and then you would turn and go downstairs to exit, to go to chow hall, to go to work, or to go out for recreation. So this is the main entrance. I witnessed an inmate beating another inmate over the head with a bar stool over a pack of cigarettes, and the white shirt ran out that door right there. Now you're looking at Fort House. The white shirt was a sergeant, and he let the guy get beat while he ran out the front door. This is the honor dorm. This is one of the older buildings. You have to be write-up free for 6 months before you're able to go into this. And you can see they can lock you in on the gate. They lock you in every night, and you have to get a pass to get out and to get back in. But in this building are basically 1, 2, 3, 4 levels on each side. It's open in the middle, and you check in through the sergeant's desk, which will show here just to the right on the bottom floor. But this is where you actually have free movement from 7 in the morning until they lock the doors at 9 o'clock at night inside. So you could walk, go in and play cards with other inmates, watch TV, or do whatever you need to do. I lived on the 7 walk, they called it, and you're gonna get to see my room that I moved into. It was 113, and I moved from 3 house to 4 house after 6 months of not having a write-up, and this was a breath of fresh air, believe it or not. This room had a window, and you could actually feed the birds. There's the window. You could actually open it up, and the birds would be there, and you could see the river, the Missouri River, off into a distance. On the 4th of July, you can lean your head out and see the fireworks over the Capitol. This was our toilet, our sink, and I had a cellmate here named Dallas Delay. He's the oldest held inmate in this institution. He was there 31 years.
Wrongful convictions occur every month in every state in this country, and the reasons are all varied and all the same. Bad police work, junk science, faulty eyewitness identifications, bad defense lawyers, lazy prosecutors, and arrogant prosecutors. Our criminal justice system is supposed to err on the side of innocence, sifting the clearly guilty from those less obviously culpable. Imprisoning or condemning the innocent exposes a host of procedural defects in our criminal justice system. Justice must be our eternal aspiration, but we should greet skeptically those who ever claim it has been fully achieved. Ted White's story is not a work of lofty philosophy or jurisprudence. It is his humble first-person story told in everyday terms of how injustice happened one blunder at a time. A nightmarish story of being imprisoned for something he did not do. No one on earth knows better than the person wrongfully imprisoned how unjust his situation is. Even devoted loved ones and dedicated lawyers can never have the same certainty as Ted White, who knew absolutely he was not guilty. And in the end, Ted White's account is an eyewitness testimony to the epitome of human isolation, wronged, separated from society and loved ones, and trapped in an existence defined by what Ted alone knows without a doubt to be a lie. The Insider Exclusive presents a true story, a story of final justice, the exoneration of Ted White. It's a testament to his resilience, his family, his lawyers, Brian McAllister and Cindy Short of the McAllister Law Firm, who helped him escape the prison cell where he did not belong. Ted's story is a reminder that freedom is not merely a matter of confinement, but also the chance to dwell with the truth. Hi, I'm Steve Murphy, and this is the Insider Exclusive, live from the McAllister Law Firm in Kansas City, Missouri. It is my great pleasure to introduce Brian McAllister and Cindy Short. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We're talking today about the exoneration of Ted White, and it's a most unusual case, hell of a case, to be honest with you. You know, tremendous problems with it initially and that sort of thing. Why did you take the case on to begin with? That's what I'm curious.
For just what you just said, it had a lot to it. At every turn in the case, there was something that I thought was exciting, not for Ted, but as a lawyer. It had tremendous challenge because anytime you go up against government or police or someone in a high position, you don't have a lot of opportunity to do that except in a courtroom.
Yeah, and in this particular case, since you had been on the criminal case and you knew that Ted was innocent.
Right.
In the state of Missouri, when a person is wrongfully convicted, is there any financial recourse that they can obtain from the state?
No, not
None
automatically.
whatsoever. Now, that's kind of unusual because in most states there's something, isn't there?
13 states
13 states
That's it.
you can recover
that
money.
provide some
Some
compensation.
compensation.
And inadequate, I would say.
And only in those cases where there has been some sort of police misconduct
Yeah.
can you bring a lawsuit against police.
Okay. Now, in this particular case, because you had been so emotionally involved and you're married, so obviously you would be talking about the case a lot to your husband sometimes at night, right?
Right.
That's about all we ever talk about.
That's not true.
This was a tremendous financial undertaking too, wasn't
Yes,
it?
It was.
yes.
So what exactly was going to be your approach here? With your legal strategy?
Well, a lot of the legal strategy has to do with the framework that 1983 provides. 1983 is the federal statute
Right.
that allows a human being to bring a lawsuit against police. So you have to have a case where the facts actually are able to be pigeonholed into the very small area of 1983 law.
Where you can prove that they violated the law.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. Now, this particular case, for folks who are unfamiliar with what happened to Ted White, since you were the criminal lawyer in this, would you
Yes.
tell our audience a little bit about what he went through?
Ted was originally accused by his stepdaughter in 1998 of having sexually molested her. And those allegations were taken to trial by a young prosecutor and with a defense team that was not armed with true information. He was convicted, and he later had his case reversed, and at the point of the reversal is when I came into the case. And the reversal was based upon new information that had literally come from an anonymous whistleblower. And as a result of that whistleblower, we were able to really open up the investigation and eventually get to the truth.
This was a co-worker of Tina,
Tina's, yeah.
Tina, the ex-wife, Tina White, who came forward and said that she had been bragging that she had a cop in her pocket.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah,
And this was
basically.
all over a divorce, and it was all about
Yes,
money, wasn't it?
It was. There were many red flags in this case, including the fact that there was some financial motive by the wife, and there was a divorce on file.
And the investigating police officer, Detective Richard
McKinley.
was having an affair with Ted's wife while the
Yes.
investigation and the trials were going on.
Which the defense in the first trial did not know.
Yeah.
Right. And actually when it was revealed, we didn't know the extent of the relationship or the length of the relationship until we really started to hunt.
Would you say there was a definite conspiracy on behalf of the police detective and the ex-wife to get Ted White?
Not only do I believe that to the tips of my feet, but a jury of 8 people unanimously believed that in the civil rights trial. There was absolutely a conspiracy to get rid of Ted White.
Yeah. We're going to have Ted on in a little bit, but tell us from your knowledge what Ted went through. He was in jail almost 6 years. the experiences he had in prison. He was labeled a child molester, wasn't he?
Right.
A sex offender.
Right.
When you are an accused and wrongfully convicted child molester in the prison system, I've heard it said many times, even murderers hate child molesters.
Yeah, they got their own code, don't
And
they?
so when you walk in with that tattooed on your forehead that you're a child molester, there is not one single minute of one single day of any week that you can rest. You're always looking over your shoulder every second of every day.
And I'd also say what's important that people don't realize is that when you're accused and other people are allowed to take control of who you are and describe your identity in public, the police describing who he was, the prosecutors describing who he was, and it was not recognizable. That is psychologically so damaging, so painful for the person who faces charges like this. And I remember Ted said to me many times after the 2 criminal trials, "Thank you for giving me my face back."
Thank you for believing in him, right? Because there's a lot of lawyers who wouldn't take this case on, would they?
People with good sense maybe might not take this case
Yeah.
on. There were a lot of pitfalls
Yeah.
to taking this case on. One of the challenges under the law was that Detective McKinley claimed to have told the prosecutor that he was having a social relationship
Social.
with Tina.
It's almost like a Bill Clinton definition, isn't it?
And so that obviously wasn't true, and
Yeah.
that we proved that in the civil rights trial as well. So when police, under the law, tell the prosecutor about something, and the prosecutor, for whatever reason, elects not to disclose that to the defense, you have no lawsuit.
These are Brady violations, aren't
Right. Yes.
they? And so when you filed your civil rights case, what are some of the issues that you brought up about why the police should be held responsible for what they did?
Number one, Detective McKinley began his relationship with Tina not during the investigation of the alleged sex crime. He started it 6 months before that. He didn't tell the prosecutor that. Number two, during the investigation, Detective McKinley either ditched evidence, specifically a diary of the young lady,
Yeah.
that raised up her father and praised her father, and actually was very critical of Tina. And Detective McKinley had that diary in his hands, read it, and then didn't keep it, or threw it in the trash can.
How do you know he had this diary and read
He
it?
admitted it.
Did he?
He had to admit it
Yeah.
because the police had also taken photographs of the inside of the little girl's room. And guess what was on her bed?
Diary.
The diary. So he had no choice. He had to admit that he had read it.
Now, did he ever admit that he had destroyed it?
Oh, no.
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 He claimed that he left it behind.
And now it no longer could be found.
No.
Right. And then
And now we know he left it behind with his lover.
we didn't then.
Yeah.
We do now.
Right.
And one of the things that a police officer knows, and that every police officer knows, that no matter whether the piece of evidence tends to convict someone or tends to show their innocence,
gotta
that
be brought
doesn't matter.
forward.
It
Yeah.
has to be preserved because it is what? Evidence in the case.
I understand he was lying to his supervisor, his chief of police, saying that he was not involved, and the chief of police had ordered him not to have any personal relationship with her while he was investigating the case, right?
Yeah, his admission to the chief of police initially was that he had been on one date
Yeah.
with this lady. And the chief was smart enough to say that that's inappropriate and you need not see her again.
Right.
And McKinley completely ignored that. McKinley was also supposed to keep his hands off the case, even in the first go-around, but McKinley didn't do that either.
I understand that he met her around town and that he used an alter ego
alias.
name,
Yes.
which was Kurt, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah. Yeah, that we discovered by finding.
This guy was a detective for the
Right.
police department, Lee Summit, isn't it? City
That's
of Lee
correct.
Summit?
Lee Summit, Missouri. It's
You
a
would-
bedroom community of
Yeah,
Kansas
you would
City.
think that he would have enough brains to realize that what he's doing is illegal and unethical, right?
Well, he knew.
He did know. I think it's like you just said, Steve. I mean, any reasonable officer would know that you don't ditch evidence.
Right.
You don't have an affair with the alleged victim's mother and keep it from people.
And you don't lie in a deposition under oath.
I also understand that he admitted that he was the beneficiary of $500,000 worth of stock.
There was some stock that that Ted had received after he was able to take his company public. He was still a major shareholder in the remaining company, and it was worth a lot of money. And the estimate was that it was worth about $500,000. But there was a provision in the stock certificate that said if the person holding the stock is a felon, they cannot hold the stock. Tina's name was on the stock as well.
Right.
And during the divorce proceedings, and after Ted was convicted, since he was a felon, the stock went to Tina and her new lover,
Right.
then, Richard McKinley.
Right.
And they sold
Well,
this public
yeah.
stock,
Yeah.
and they got hundreds of thousands of dollars for it.
Yeah.
So there was a
They
huge
ended up
financial
getting-
incentive.
They ended up getting married too, right? They're married today, right?
They are
As far
married
as we
today.
know. As far as we know.
Now, this particular case, how long does it take to process a case like this?
Well, 1983 cases like this, civil rights cases like this against police, take an inordinate amount of time compared to other tort cases. Mainly because the police have such power and such influence in our society, as they should. They're an important part of society. But they have what's called the right of interlocutory appeal, meaning in the middle of the case, they can actually take issues up on appeal in the middle of the case before you ever get to trial. So you can imagine when that happens, when the appeal is processed, it takes the case off the trial docket for however long it takes for the Court of Appeals to process.
And what were they trying to appeal?
They were trying to appeal this vast immunity that police officers have in these kinds of lawsuits.
Okay.
Police officers have qualified immunity. The reason it's qualified is sometimes if they lie, they bust their immunity. They can be held liable. So on summary judgment proceedings, those are proceedings that someone can utilize during trial with the trial court and say, look, there's no evidence in the record to support a claim against our police officer because they have qualified immunity. And they file pleadings, we have to respond to them with
Right.
evidence.
Qualified meaning they don't have total immunity.
Right. Like the
Correct.
prosecutors.
If they violate the law, they could be held responsible.
Correct. That's
So
right.
what they're trying to show is that he didn't violate the law.
Well,
Well-
this was the prosecutor's fault.
Actually, their argument was, A, that the law was not clearly established that McKinley should have followed. They were trying to argue that the law wasn't clearly established, that he had to disclose an extramarital affair.
How about
with
just turning
Tina.
over all the evidence?
Yeah.
They also
That's pretty
said-
clear,
they,
isn't it?
They said about that because the prosecutor knew about the missing diary, that the inquiry didn't go any further than that.
So in other words, it was the prosecutor's fault.
They blamed everything on the
Okay.
prosecutor.
And did they come to their defense?
I think the
Quasi.
jury's still out on that.
So it went to the Court of Appeals while your
In
civil
the
rights
middle of the case.
while your civil rights case is going on. So how long did the case take, approximately?
From the point of their appeal, that delayed trial another year and a half.
Yeah, so
We
you-
filed the case in March of 2005, and we went to trial in August of 2008. We got a verdict August the 29th of 2008, and here we are today in Kansas City on March the 12th, 2010. We haven't collected a penny.
2 years later.
2 years after the verdict.
The verdict was for 16 million,
That's right.
14 million for
compensatory.
Actual damages, 14
actual
million.
damages.
punitive damages, which is referred to as the make it hurt damages.
Yeah. Now, this is
$1
up at
million.
the Missouri Court of Appeals, right?
Eighth Circuit.
It's actually a
Circuit.
federal court of appeals.
Okay. And it is, when is it supposed to be
That's getting
looked at?
close now.
We had oral arguments. That's what you have to go do
Yeah.
on your briefs. First you file your briefs, then you have to go to the court and make your arguments.
Right.
We did that on January the 12th of this year, and today's the second month anniversary of that oral argument, and we might hear in a month.
Oftentimes you can tell how the judges are leaning by the questions they asked. What sort of questions did they ask?
Well, the appeal issues, as you can probably imagine, the second time around are very narrow.
Yeah.
Because they've already taken a bunch of them up on the first appeal.
Yeah.
So all that they were left with after the trial was over was that the judge made horrible mistakes during the trial, which is not a very popular argument with the Eighth Circuit, or that the facts did not support the verdict. A little hard to argue that the facts don't support a verdict when you have a police officer sleeping with an alleged victim's wife and then lying about it at a deposition. It's hard to imagine that that's not supportive of a verdict in our favor. So the odds are pretty good, I think, that that Ted will finally one day be able to put this behind him.
Now, when I remember reading that to pursue this case, to pursue McKinley, it's against McKinley and the city of
Lee Summit.
Lee Summit. The chief of police was initially named in the case too, right?
The chief and the city were initially named.
And they were dismissed out of the suit?
They settled.
They settled.
They settled by saying to us, we will indemnify, we will pay for any verdict against Richard McKinley.
Okay.
Normally, they don't have to do that.
Why would they do that? If they had remained in the lawsuit, they would have had to pay it anyway. Why would they do that?
Actually, if they had remained in the lawsuit, the only time they would have had to pay is if we had proven that the city's own policies
Yeah.
contributed to the constitutional deprivation.
So you think that they,
Hard case.
So you think that they went along and decided to indemnify if Richard McKinley is found guilty, is because they know that things don't look too good for him.
I think that's the inevitable conclusion.
Well,
They want to get it behind them.
They want to get it behind them. I also think that they thought, I don't think they thought we would prevail. I mean, I think they thought they were taking a safe bet.
Really?
That could be.
I mean, that's the way I would interpret it. Because why
Now-
else would you do it?
This is an interesting question that a lot of people who might watch this show might have. You know, those lawyers, they're suing for a lot of money, but really the question is, what is a man's life worth?
Right.
Correct?
Right.
And you ask this question to us all the time.
Right.
What is the experience worth when you are ostracized by society, you're beat up, you're put in horrible situations, your father has a heart attack, your family near goes bankrupt? What does that translate into dollars? Is $16 million enough?
Well, and I think a really important thing that touched the jury was that on the day that Ted was thrown out of his family, standing there was 2-year-old Tanner, who was his natural son, is his natural son.
Yeah.
He has never seen that boy again.
Right.
And the person raising that child, the person that child calls dad, is Detective McKinley.
Yeah.
That is a devastating injury to
Yeah.
Ted.
How old is his son now?
His son is same age as our middle son, so he's 12, I think.
12. There might come a point in time.
We hope. We hope.
When
Ted
he's
made
older.
some courageous decisions in terms of allowing this child who's been raised in a home where his name is vilified to grow up, and Ted's prayer is that at some point this child will come and want to ask some questions and
Yeah.
meet him.
Perhaps as an adult,
Yeah.
he'll be
Yeah.
curious. Want to find out.
This case must be a case that, and you've been involved with a lot of these types of cases, but this is something you must hold near and dear. I mean, I've watched you with Ted and, the relationship that you have with this man that has endured so much pain, so much hurt, so much injustice.
Right.
It must make you feel pretty good to get that verdict, right?
More than that, it feels good to participate in something as meaningful as the verdict in a human being's life
Yeah.
that changes their life
Right.
completely. There aren't very many people, I think, that are able to be a part of something like that, and it just makes you feel incredibly good.
Yeah.
Well, it is why we went to law school.
Yeah.
This is the dream, you know, that you would actually be able to right a wrong, that you would be part of exposing something that's wrong with the judicial system, a justice system that we're devoted to, and that we could see Ted move forward in his life, get
Yeah.
married again, have a child, open a business, and do the things that really make him happy.
Well, today we're lucky enough to have Ted with us, so let's bring him on right now. It is my great pleasure to introduce Ted White. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We've been listening about this horrible experience that you went through, almost 6 long years, and it's still really ongoing. When you look at everything you went through, can you tell our audience, you know, from like day one, when you were initially convicted, when you were charged, when you were convicted, what was it like? What was going through your mind?
Well, you can't believe it's happening to you first, because when you hear these horrible things come out of somebody's mouth that you love, as soon as they leave their lips, you're automatically guilty. The public perceives you as being guilty, so you're sitting there trying to figure it out, and you're just numb. I mean, you can't even comprehend the allegations, let alone it being about you.
You had a good relationship with your stepdaughter,
I had a
didn't
good
you?
relationship with her, yes.
Have you ever wondered, you know, what went wrong in terms of why these charges? Why didn't she come forward and say, I can't do this or whatever?
Yeah, I'm still hopeful that she'll tell the truth.
How old is she now?
I think she's probably 23, 24.
23.
Yeah, somewhere in there. And yeah, I think that there was a lot of craving for attention,
Right.
and she wasn't getting it. You know, I was spending a lot of time with the boys, and she was a tomboy,
Yeah.
and her mom wasn't spending any time with her. And then when I was gone, she had to take care of the boys.
Yeah.
So I think there was a cry there. That was one of the things, but I think it's kind of like pouring gas on the fire.
Right.
I think that if there was anything that was said to get somebody's attention, she sure had a lot of help to
Right.
facilitate what happened from that point.
Everybody has a fear. You had never been in jail before.
No.
Okay. Everybody has a fear of going to jail that has never been there before. What were your fears?
Well, it was a true fear, because I felt I was a duck out of water.
Because you had been branded.
Well, I was a businessman one day,
Yeah.
and the next day I'm branded with these horrible, I was convicted child molester according
Yeah.
to what they had done, and here I am going into a level 5 maximum security prison,
Sentenced 50 years.
sentenced 50 years, and even murderers have children.
Yeah.
So they kill child molesters,
So
and they're
what-
heroes.
So did they put you in protective custody right away? Or
No,
what?
I
They
lived in
didn't know.
population.
You did. That was by your choice.
I felt that if I was going to be there 50 years, I had to have some sort of life.
Yeah.
So I held out for the library job and became the head librarian for the institution.
Were you always looking over your shoulder?
Yeah. I think what really got my attention was they found a machete behind where I worked in the library that somebody was going to cut my head off. And somebody turned the guy in, and they pulled this machete out behind the books. And it was like 2 rows behind where I worked every day.
Yeah. How does a machete get into the prison?
Well, there's a lot of homemade shanks.
Yeah.
This
I mean,
is
a machete's pretty big, isn't it?
Machete's big, and they make them. I mean, there's still a way to file and take pieces of metal and turn them into knives, or take a screwdriver or an ice pick and turn it into a weapon. So I was in a very old institution,
Yeah.
and so there was a lot of places to hide those type of things.
Well, Ted, didn't they, back then, the prisoners behind the walls in Jefferson City were making license plates.
They made license plates,
And they're metal.
and they had hobby craft where they had tools to make things, and
Yeah.
so yeah, you could get a shank for 2 packs or 3 packs of cigarettes.
Who were your friends? You had to have some friends in prison.
Well, in prison, you call them associates.
Associates?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know if you have any friends. They're usually your cellie, whoever you're roomed with,
Yeah.
and maybe the people that you associate with church. You know, like I told you, there was 3 or 4 of us that prayed together in Mother Opal's class.
Yeah.
And I would call them more friends than associates.
There came a time during your prison confinement that you met a woman by the name of Mother Opal Williamson. Tell our audience a little bit about who this woman was and how she changed your life.
She was a lady that came in to minister to the inmates for over 40 years, and she would make the guards open the chapel every day, wind, rain, snow, or shine, so that these few inmates that joined her Bible study could come out and pray for the other inmates' families and learn the Bible. And I joined her Bible study, and because I saw her glowing as she was walking into the chapel one day, and said I had to meet that lady. There's very few places of light in the prison where I was at, and that just happened to be one of them. The horseshoe pit, the library, and the church was the 3 places.
What was it about her that you felt you had to meet her?
I was drawn to her immediately when I saw her because I felt her spirit. I really think now I look back,
Yeah.
I felt that I was drawn to her, and I did not have a good foundation in the Bible. I didn't know much about it. I grew up Methodist, but never really got into religion or that much. And I think what happened was she started teaching me the fundamentals of the New Testament, and I was able to ask questions. And the fact that we prayed for the other inmates' families was really impactful to me, because she told me once that there's 2 prayers that God hears: children and prisoners, because they're sincere. That's what she told me.
Now, originally, she made a suggestion to you, didn't she, about what you should be doing, thinking, reorganizing your thinking.
Right.
What was that suggestion?
Well, she told me, after I told her how wrongfully I had been convicted and how mad I was, that she had a solution for me. And she told me I needed to get on my knees and pray for the people that had did this to me and my family. And I remember she holding my hand, and I jerked it back and said, "You're the craziest old lady I've ever met in my life." And you know what's funny about that? She laughed for maybe 15 minutes and said I was the first inmate to ever call her crazy in 44 years. So what I took out of it is there's no way I was going to do it. And then I thought about what she'd said, and in order to take control of my life,
Right.
I had to forgive these people. There was too much hate. And when I did, when I got on my knees and prayed, is when everything, all the evidence fell like manna from heaven in my case. Because
Right.
I really sincerely forgave them, which means that I wish that they would take care of my kids. I wish that they would do them no harm, and that I wish them no bad feelings.
Yeah.
And my dad had told me a long time ago he didn't like to have bad thoughts about people in his head because it didn't do any good. And so I recalled some of that and realized that she was right. And I took control of my life. Took it back.
When you get down on your knees, that's in and of itself, an admission that maybe there's something that the Lord can help us with, isn't it?
How do you forgive people that steal your kids?
Yeah.
You know, that's a tough one. You know, how do you forgive someone that steals your children with lies? But it was the only way that I could get my life back was to get on my knees and humbly pray that they would be okay. And that was a defining moment for me. And she's the one who basically taught me about the power of forgiveness.
Do you still pray for those same things?
I do. I think there's a big difference in accountability, holding people accountable for doing you wrong and forgiving them. You know, I was asked, what would Jesus do? You know, when we had our lawsuit, and then somebody said, well, what would Jesus do? Would he sue him?
He'd hire Brian McAllister.
and I said, you know, I think Jesus would hold him accountable, but he would still forgive him. And that was and I do. And I think what that means is you have no hate in your heart. You don't wish ill will towards them. But, you know,
Do you find, there's a lot of people who are convicted who say they are not guilty. You see this in a lot. You know, did you find that when you were in prison that there were people that would admit to some things they had done or look to change their lives? Was this a defining moment for them too?
Yeah, I believe that self-rehabilitation goes on in prison, not rehabilitation from the prison.
Yeah.
And so people that were self-rehabilitated have that sincere, you could feel that they admitted what they had done and they were trying to be better themselves. But there were also people in there that were innocent.
Yeah.
That I met 2 or 3 guys that one of them was released just recently that was down 17 years. And he came into my cell many nights and would tell me, I'm innocent. And here we would go through that. And so you have both worlds. You have people that say they're innocent.
Yeah.
And then you have those that maybe are.
But you'd be able to help him by teaching him how to pray too, for forgiveness.
That is that's what I do now.
That was your ticket to sanity, wasn't it?
I found peace in the middle of a level 5 institution.
Yeah. Now, level 5 for our audience, what's that
That's a
mean?
maximum security level prison.
Okay.
So here I am surrounded by walls. That's why they call it the walls. Jefferson City Correctional was built in 1836, had these ominous walls surrounding the yard. And I found peace in the middle on my knees, praying for those people that needed to be prayed for.
Time magazine once called The Walls the bloodiest 47 acres in America, where more people have been killed and injured than I think any other prison. Did that go on while you were there?
Yes, it went on. There was the first day I was released from rookie walk. The inmate in where we ate our lunch, they call it chow hall, was stabbed and killed right next to me where I was sitting. And that's where you learn. I had to learn not to put my legs up under the table because they will pull you back and stick a shank in you.
So what?
So you have to sit. You have to sit at an angle with your one leg out, with your back to the wall, in case somebody's coming up. You have visual to see who your attacker is.
Yeah.
Saw an inmate get hit over the head with a steel bar stool, and the white sergeant ran out the front door while they beat him over the head with a bar stool over a pack of cigarettes.
They kill him?
He went into a coma, and I think he died. So at any given moment in the place where I was at, the hair on the back of your neck, you always had to remember where you were.
Most of the people where you were at have lengthy sentences. So most of them really don't care if they commit another crime, do they?
Yeah, and that's where you get into the situation to where if you want to live and survive, you have to get into a survival mode because they don't care.
Right.
And if they get upset, they may walk in your cell and, I had to learn to sleep with my feet next to the bars, not my head, because the suicide watchmen that went around to talk to people that were contemplating suicide, were the ones that would shank you and stick an ice pick in your temple.
Really?
Yeah, so you didn't lay with your feet, your head next to the bars, you laid with your feet next to the bars just for that simple fact. I had to learn all that stuff.
What were the feelings that you went through, after all of these trials, these 3 trials? Did you ever give up hope?
The time I gave up hope was when the only time that I really gave up hope was when I had the hung juror. When the appeal was overturned, I was moved back to county jail in Clay County, and I sat through this trial that I was just ready to go home.
Right.
And this juror hung me. And then to find out what we found out about that juror that should have never been on that jury pool.
Yeah.
I didn't know it at the time, but I had to go back into a place I'd been for 2.5 years, which was county, which was rougher than being in, I had nowhere to go. And I went back to that same cell, and they put me in isolation for 3 days, and I didn't eat, I didn't sleep, and I didn't really want to live anymore.
Now, because Cindy, who's Brian's wife, represented you successfully, finally, in the 3rd trial. They obviously talked to you about filing a civil rights case against the police department and everybody who had conspired to put you where you were. What were your thoughts while this was going on?
My family had mortgaged their farm.
Yes.
We'd gone through 3 trials. We had to fight the prosecutor's office, the Missouri Attorney General's office twice, and they literally bankrupted my family. So if anything, for my family's sake, I needed to fight to get them recovery that they worked 45 years
Yeah.
to build up, and they were losing everything. But they stood behind me, and they needed recovery. So I was willing to do what I had to do to hold these people accountable.
And your dad suffered health-wise too, didn't he?
My dad went down. He worked 7 days a week to pay for my lawyer fees. He had 5 bypasses. They gave him 5% chance to live. They even discussed whether or not they were going to operate him, if it was worth it or not. And that's not fair to him or my family to be put through that when they knew, they knew what the evidence was, and they knew that they shouldn't have prosecuted us again.
How do you think the system, and this is to you too, Brian, how do you think the system could work better so that the Ted Whites of the world don't get prosecuted wrongfully?
Boy, that's a tough question. Ted's case is such an unusual case because it really stands out like a sore thumb as the scourge of law enforcement. This case represents the worst of the worst kind of law enforcement officer. Someone who lies, someone who sacrifices their soul, really, to get someone. So I would say the way you make it better is make sure that people like that aren't providing law enforcement to our communities across this country.
Now, I understand it took a number of years for McKinley to finally get canned, didn't it?
Well,
he quit, didn't he?
He quit the police department. We have come to learn that after the civil rights verdict, where Detective McKinley was ordered to pay $14 million to at least help this family recover, that Lee Summit finally did an internal affairs investigation, one that meant something.
After the verdict?
After the verdict.
Another 11 years later.
Yeah. Now, what rank is he there? What rank was he when he left?
When he left the Lee Summit Police Department, he had been...
Don't tell me promoted.
He stepped down from detective and became a beat cop again.
But he was still at the detective level in pay.
Still getting paid. And he's probably getting retirement, right?
Oh, sure. Sure.
So they did an internal affairs investigation.
Following the verdict.
Yeah, and they said, basically, you should leave.
Not basically. What they said was, you lied in your deposition during the first criminal trial. You didn't tell the truth. And they told Mr. McKinley, based upon what we understand, that he would be fired on a certain day, and before that day came, he resigned from the department.
Right after the August 29th judgment on the civil, a month later, he was still employed with the city, and that's when I went up to the city where the city hall was, and Lee Summit, and picketed City Hall for the citizens to do the right thing and address the city council. And none of the city council would look me in the eye.
Yeah.
And basically what I asked them is that I was turning it over to the citizens and holding them accountable.
Right.
Because they were backing this guy. He was still on the force.
Yeah. Now, you have been exonerated. You have been vindicated.
Yes, sir.
But you still have to deal with some sort of stigma, right? That you were even involved with this thing to begin with, right?
Yes.
How do you handle that?
Well, it's very tough. I was at a wedding in Canada a week before Christmas Eve, and I was arrested at Salt Lake Airport.
Recently?
Recently. And on my, there was a bogus warrant that was issued from the state of Missouri, and they arrested me, and the only thing that was on the file that they showed was what McKinley and the police department had put on in 2000, that I was a child molester, I was a violent man, and there was nothing on there updating that record that showed that I had been exonerated and vindicated by those trials. So those people took me into custody. I slept on the floor of a bathroom with 8 inmates under a toilet for 3 days, and then they retracted the warrant and let me go, and it said they were sorry.
What was the warrant for?
we never figured out what the warrant was for, but it came out of Jefferson City, Missouri, that there was an outstanding warrant that turned out to be that there wasn't an outstanding warrant. And when they looked at the file on me, the shadow file that they keep in law enforcement, shows me as a very, very bad guy.
The shadow file that Ted's referring to is the NCIC. It's
Yeah,
an
but can't
official
he-
law enforcement record.
Can't he get that expunged?
No.
They have to change it at Lee Summit and update it, and they failed to update it. So every time I get stopped for a traffic ticket or pulled over for anything, the only thing that they're going to see is what was in that record on 2000.
Can anything be done about this, Brian?
Not under today's law. Now, his official criminal record
Yeah.
is closed
Yes.
and can only be opened to Ted at his request. So as far as the public is concerned, there is no record. But whenever Ted is pulled over by law enforcement and they pull up his NCIC, this is what they are seeing on their computer screen now. Today, 12 years later, Ted White is a child molester.
That's why we're doing this show, because you're obviously not. You were a businessman in 1998 when all this started. You're a businessman today, correct?
Yes.
What type of work do you do?
I'm in the insurance business. I'm a regional manager for a senior insurance company out west.
When you got this job, obviously you had a disclosure passed.
Yeah.
And how did that go?
168 pages that Brian and Cindy provided for me to provide to the state insurance commissioner to review, and every time I have to license with a carrier, I have to give them that file.
Just stays with you?
The first question on the app is, have you ever been convicted of a crime?
And you have to put yes.
You have to put yes.
But, yes, but.
And then the 168 pages.
But there's a lot of people, because you just say yes, they don't look any further, right?
And that's why the scarlet letter
Exactly.
stays with you for the rest of your life.
Exactly.
People don't appreciate that in society, that once you are labeled, doesn't matter whether you're acquitted or not. It follows you the rest of your life and really tends to define you. Ted is one of those unusual folks that has not allowed it to identify him.
Because you have no choice.
Well,
Right?
I think you have to go forward, not backwards.
Absolutely.
And I know that I'm innocent of these things, and what I have to do is go forward in my life, and I'm a better person because of what I've been through, believe it or not. That was my only goal coming out of prison. I couldn't understand why I was there, but I knew that if I came out a better person, which very few people do, then I would be okay.
There's an old saying, adversity builds character, and you have about as much character as you need, right?
Yeah.
No, that's tremendous, and I am so glad that Brian and Cindy were able to do such wonderful work for a true, injustice. We are fortunate right now to have with us the jury foreman in that third trial, Dan Miller. We're going to bring him on right now. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I understand you were the jury foreman in the third trial of Ted.
I was.
And did you have any knowledge of the case at all from reading in the newspapers or anything?
No, sir, none at all. I was living out of state at the time that it was all going on.
You were called as a juror.
I was called as
This
a
is
juror.
the very first jury trial you ever sat on.
Yes, sir.
And behind the closed doors, how did they pick you as the jury foreman?
I was probably a little more vocal and a little more of an advocate for Ted, and knowing the evidence and understanding it as it was presented.
In other words, in this third trial, you saw all the inconsistencies, the irregularities that had taken place in the other two trials.
Yes, sir.
And why is it that you could put yourself in his place? Because he had been how long had he been in prison at this time?
A little over 6 years.
Well, that's 6 years. How could you put yourself in his position, understanding that he had been in prison for 6 years, he was wrongfully accused,
Right.
based on the evidence? How did you relate to that?
It was, as I say this, it was touching all the way around.
Yeah.
Starting from the very beginning. You could tell that Ted was broken. He'd been through a lot.
Yeah.
The evidence that was portrayed and given was so overwhelming was so overwhelming
In his favor.
in his favor
Yeah.
that as we talked, and we never really talked evidence, but none of us could really believe that we're honestly sitting here for a third time.
Yeah. Was that the general feeling of all the jurors in the jury room?
All but a couple.
You know, because in the second trial, there was 11 people who kind of felt the same way, but there was one holdout. These holdouts, let's say, that you had on your jury, what were their doubts? Did they bring to the jury room some prejudices or some feelings that everybody who's accused by the police got to be guilty?
Right. They did. And they should have never, after talking with them and questioning them on why they felt the way they did, they should have never been allowed to be on the jury.
How do you persuade somebody who seems adamant about the way they think? You know, if a person's accused by the police, they got to be guilty. How do you persuade them to see another viewpoint? We
went back over the timeline. We went back over the evidence that was presented. We all had our notes. We sat down and I had to do quite a bit of persuasion with a couple of people. There were some other advocates on my side as well there that helped out a lot. But it was taking the evidence, throw away your personal views and your personal thoughts, and let's get down to the real reason that we're here. And that's what really had to happen.
And your jury was only out for an hour and a half, right?
Right.
So you must be a fast talker.
There were times during the trial, and I'll be honest with you, most of us wanted to just stand up and say, okay, we've heard enough. In all honesty.
Seriously.
Right.
After the trial, I understand that you got to know Ted. You're working with him now, right?
Right.
Your whole life has kind of changed, hasn't it?
Meeting Ted White has been an interesting road.
And by the way,
it's been very good.
And by the way, while you're a juror, you got paid what, $7 a day or something?
Yes, sir, $7.
As a result of being paid $7 a day, and the trial was what, 3 weeks, 2 weeks? How long was it?
It was close to 6.
6 weeks.
6 weeks.
As a result of that, you suffered financial hardship, didn't you?
I did.
In fact, you had to go, you had to file bankruptcy because did you lose your job or something or what?
I was unfortunate enough to work for a company that didn't compensate you while you were doing any kind of community work like this.
Yeah.
So I lost my standard daily wages that I was used to getting for this 6-week period. I worked in an industry that was up and down anyway in the manufacturing world, and we ended up losing a vehicle, got driven to the point of bankruptcy, and it was a bad deal, but it is what it is.
But you saw that you were doing justice for somebody.
Right.
You were doing justice, which should have been done in the first trial, right?
Right.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm so impressed with some of the things that, that you stood for and for him. Because without you, he might not be here today.
They're the real heroes.
Yeah.
People like Mo Ropel and Dan, and they stood up to the system. I appreciate that.
Well, you're very welcome. And part of the conversation we used to have is sitting up in the jury room was, even if you have one small doubt, I would rather meet my maker knowing that I let a guilty man free than sentence an innocent man for the rest of his life.
Well, thank God you think that way. Thank God you were in the right place at the right time. And thank you for being on the show.
Thank you very much.
Brian, I understand you had a co-counsel on this case. Who was that?
Mike Kanovitz from Chicago, Illinois. He's with the Lovey and Lovey law firm in Chicago, and they have made their living and have dedicated their lives to doing exclusively civil rights cases in the Chicagoland area. Mm-hmm. And without Lovey and Lovey and Mike Kanovitz, then Ted would not have had the justice that he was able to achieve.
Mm-hmm. Do you find that there are lawyers that dedicate themselves strictly to these type of exoneration cases, civil rights cases?
Not in Kansas City so much.
Very few.
Right. I would say that that's a boutique or specialty law firm that you don't see in every community.
Is that because they're difficult cases?
Very difficult cases.
They're law intensive, and the law is always changing. So you need to have someone on board and be able to have someone with you on the case that knows what happened yesterday at the Supreme Court or what happened yesterday at the 7th or the 8th Circuit.
Right. Our system of justice is probably better than most countries, but there are flaws. How do we prevent wrongful convictions? How do we change the system so that we have the least amount of people prosecuted that shouldn't be prosecuted?
Well, that's a very good question. There's some excellent work being done down in Texas by a prosecutor there.
Dallas.
Who recognizes that we have, that this is a human system and that there are going to be mistakes made. And so we have to be more diligent about our filing choices, and we have to be more open to the possibility that someone is truly innocent. We in fact have to employ what the Constitution requires, which is a person is innocent until proven guilty. Unfortunately, as a society, we look at it the other way around.
Do you think from the beginning, the birth of our republic, that if you were accused of something, the majority of people would automatically think that you had to be somewhat guilty? So
Right.
that's human nature, isn't it?
It is human
It isn't just our system, is it?
Right. No, it's human nature. And anytime you put humans in charge of any kind of system, there are going to be problems. It's going to be influenced by personality and by bias and
they bring to the table their own personal experiences. Like that first juror Ted talked to us about, outside the show, but that first juror had been in the criminal case.
Yeah.
The one holdout
Right.
had apparently molested
He'd
two
been
kids himself.
He'd been accused,
Yeah.
and that accusation obviously should have been revealed in jury selection.
Right.
And without that revelation, we can't get justice.
Yeah, when someone has been wrongfully convicted and spent time in jail, they've got to be compensated some way, right? I mean, that's the just thing to do.
They should be.
But there are only, as you said earlier, 13 states that
There
allow
are
this?
13 states in the Union that provide automatic compensation, and I put the word automatic in quotation marks.
Automatic means what? You
Automatic,
apply?
You have to go through the process that the government sets up to be compensated if you were truly innocent, which is a second prong, and that's always subject to interpretation.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that truly innocent. If you are convicted of a crime and it's overturned for some violations and you can't be tried for it again, can you be classified as truly innocent?
I think you can when the process that's available is actually works. So when someone is wrongfully convicted and then goes through what's called the habeas relief system,
Well, any appeal system.
and new evidence comes out that proves their innocence, they can be truly innocent.
Well, and you're talking about, there's factual innocence and there's legal innocence. There are two ways in which you can be innocent. And I think that the laws we're talking about are designed for those individuals who are factually innocent. So the Ted Whites, the Carrie Max Cooks, the Darrell Burtons, it's those people that they're really looking at. The Dennis Fritzes, et cetera.
They are the truly innocent.
The truly innocent. And the problem is, I don't know if people realize that when somebody is paroled from prison, they are given certain things and they're given access to certain services when they get out. If you are released as an exonerated individual, there's nothing. No, You're not entitled to a service, you're not entitled to a bus ride home, you're entitled to nothing.
How can we fix that?
It should be easy to fix because, frankly, the number of times we open the door to let someone out who is innocent each year is a very small number. It should be a bigger number, but it's not that. So it should be easy to fix, but it's not a priority, I guess.
Do you see, as a result of this case and other exoneration cases, like the Innocence Project's, 200, what is it now, 256, somewhere in the neighborhood, exonerations, do you see that the system is changing at all?
I do. I think people are not as trusting as they were maybe 25 years ago.
You mean
People
jurors, you mean
yeah,
jurors.
people
Humans.
meaning those jurors. So they come in with a jaundiced eye.
Sometimes. And again, I think that requires a really good jury selection, because I think some jurors come in with a prejudice point of view. So I don't know that that's, but you know, where it is changing is more and more people are aware that the possibility of convicting someone wrongly is a possibility. Like the McDonald's case in civil cases, in criminal cases, people know those exonerations have occurred.
Yeah.
So that's got to weigh, we believe that's got to weigh in the back of their minds.
I want to thank both of you for spending so much time with us on this show today. You've done a remarkable job for Ted. And you just keep on going, you know, making sure that those innocent people get out of jail and see the light of day. Thank you. Thanks for watching. You can get more information about this show and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.